Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, we continue our discussion on early Earth after a break for 1 week last week. Let me share the screen again. So we're going to cover the last eon, right, which is from 2.4 to 0.55 billion years ago. We have covered the Hadean eon and the Archean eon. And so we are now moving on to the Proterozoic eon. Now, the Proterozoic, like I explained in the last lecture, it is actually a Greek word. Proto means before, rozoic means life, so it's before life. So why is it before life? Because you're going to see at the end of this eon, at the mark of 0.55 billion years ago, about half a billion years ago, or equivalent to about 550 million years ago, there was this explosion of life. So it is as if that there were no life. There was no life before that, or there was life, but very simple life. Okay. Now, what was that life? Okay, that life is actually the eukaryotes' life, which is a very simple cell. Now, we've covered about the oxygen, right? The what do you call it? The production of oxygen during the Archean period, in which we have seen that what do you call it? The kind of bacteria which thrives on the oceans of the Earth, because Earth was covered with lots of water, right? Most of the Earth was before covered with lots of water. So this bacteria, what do you call it? It was produced in very, very high quantity, right? And then after that, after millions of years, hundreds of millions of years, right, it produced oxygen. So the level of oxygen in the atmosphere increased. But as it increased, right, the oxygen was absorbed by the surface of the Earth itself, which is covered by rocks, by metals and whatever, calcium and so forth. So they combine together with oxygen because, like I shared before, oxygen is a very reactive element. So therefore we have oxides, right? We have this, what do you call it? Iron oxides, and also after that we have calcium carbonates and so forth, so forth. So all these oxygen combined together, it reduced the number of oxygen, right, from the atmosphere, and cyanobacteria continue to produce all those oxygens until the oxygen in the atmosphere reached to a certain level that no more of that free oxygen being absorbed or combined with the any elements or any compounds on the surface of the Earth itself. It means that it has reached to the saturation point, right? That the oxygen remains in the atmosphere, it keeps increasing, and as it increases, it reached to a limit where it cannot increase further. Why? Because oxygen is actually poisonous to cyanobacteria. So the level of oxygen that increased in the atmosphere during the Archean period, it actually killed most of the cyanobacteria. And so therefore Allah SWT adjusts the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere itself, right? There's a balance. Everything is in a balance, subhanallah. And Allah SWT mentions this very, very clearly in Surah Ar-Rahman. Allah SWT says what about the heavens? وَالسَّمَاءَ رَفَعَهَا وَوَضَعَ الْمِيزَانِ. And the heavens, we raise them. And the heavens here can refer to the universe at large, and also can refer to our atmosphere. Allah SWT raised the atmosphere. Allah SWT raised or enlarged the universe itself. وَوَضَعَ الْمِيزَانِ. Then Allah SWT put the mizan, put all the measurements in precise order. So everything has been measured properly by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That has been decreed by Allah before everything has been created in the Lawhul Mahfuz. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put on earth that adjustment by cyanobacteria. You produce a lot of oxygen, yes, right? Then, but this oxygen that you produce also will kill yourself. So when the oxygen reaches to a certain limit, it cannot go out further. Because why? Because the factory that produced the oxygen, which is cyanobacteria, they died. The oxygen killed them. And so the level of oxygen then after that reduced a little bit, right? And then once it's reduced, cyanobacteria started to, what do you call it, explode again and then produce more oxygen and then kill itself again. So the level of oxygen remains almost the same for hundreds of millions of years. So when there is what do you call it, the level of oxygen that is remains static in the atmosphere, right? That's where you have this ozone stabilization. Now, ozone is from the oxygen. It is O3. Okay, three. Is it 3 or 1? I think it's 3, right? Yeah, it's 3 oxygen together, right? 3 oxygen atoms together, if not mistaken. Then they can only combine if the oxygen's level remain static or stable in the atmosphere. So why now ozone is important? Because Allah created this oxygen, even though it's very reactive, it is actually what do you call it? It can kill us, you know, oxygen. You give people, right, oxygen, pure oxygen for a long period of time. If that person does not need the oxygen, I mean, normal healthy person, you give the oxygen a pure oxygen for a long period of time, that oxygen can kill that person, right? Because it's so reactive. But oxygen also is very useful because it actually form the ozone, right? The 3 oxygen, yeah, the 3 oxygen, and then after that, right, this ozone actually becomes like a filter. It becomes like a shelter, right, sheltering the earth from violent ultraviolet rays that reach us. So therefore, when you don't have this ozone, then the ultraviolet can easily reach us. When it reaches us, it can burn things because ultraviolet is on the electromagnetic spectrum on the, what do you call it, the short wavelength, right? And it's therefore it's very energetic. Those who have sunburn, not because of infrared, they got sunburn because of ultraviolet light. And UV is very, what do you call it, dangerous because of its high energy. It can kill cells. Our cells are very fragile, skin cell especially. So you have a lot of UVs, right, hitting our cell. It can destroy the DNA. It can cause a mutation of the DNA. And so therefore cancer cells can form. And so cancer cells can what do you call it, increase in number, right? So UV is very dangerous for life. It can kill life. It can destroy cells. But when you have that ozone layer around the earth, right, at the atmosphere, the ultraviolet lights, of course, they can still penetrate through, but it is not that much. They will not be that high enough level to kill life on Earth, right, on Earth's surface itself. So ozone has been there protecting us for a very, very long period of time, for billions of years, starting from during the Proterozoic period, which is what, 2 billion years ago. Ozone has been there, right? And so life started to, what do you call it, emerge. Allah caused life to emerge. And this scientists call it through the mechanism of evolution. Now, evolution is not a dirty word, okay? It is just a mechanism of how life, what do you call it, propagate on this planet Earth, because of adaptation to environment, survival of the fittest, and so forth. That is evolution, and it's part and parcel of Allah's decree, right? Whether there is an evolution from one smaller species to another smaller species, or from one species to another, that is open to debate, but it's not impossible in Islam, right? For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it as part of the creation, part of the mechanism for creation on this earth. We are so used to the thought that life has been created instantaneously, like us, right? Nabi Adam AS was created instantaneously. It means that it was not through any evolution. Allah created from clay, the shape of Homo sapien, and that Homo sapien, Allah gave the name Adam AS. And so therefore, our creation is spontaneous. But we thought that by extension, all animals were created that way. There is no proof in the Quran that all animals were created that way. Allah SWT said, I created all these things And creation can take place spontaneously. Creation can take place gradually by way of evolution, by way of this or other mechanism. There is nothing surprising lah, right, for us to consider that. So therefore, right, oxygen was there for billions of years. It's only about 40 years ago, during 1980s, humans started to destroy the ozone layer. Unwittingly, they are trying to we are trying to kill ourselves, slowly killing ourselves. We created this chemical, this compound that we call as chlorofluorocarbon, which is CFC. And it's very stable. This CFC compound is very stable. It's been used for refrigeration, right, to cool things up in our refrigerator, in our aircon, and it's being used to produce, that container for food, the white container, the plastic container that is called CFC. They could use CFC there. And we created that CFC because it's a stable compound. But when CFC is being released to the atmosphere, because it's very stable, it reacts with ozone and it destroys the ozone. It destroys the ozone, the oxygen molecule that were attached together. So they become free oxygen. And then they combine together to becomes what they call it, a bimolecular oxygen, which is O2. We destroy ourselves. So there were a lot of CFC released in 1970s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, and suddenly scientists realized that, oh, this CFC is very dangerous for us. It destroys the ozone, and there appeared a huge hole over the Antarctica and over the Arctic, right? Huge hole caused by the CFC in the atmosphere. This hole means that there was a hole in the ozone shield. So when there was a hole, right, and the hole kept on increasing, ultraviolet rays and all the other dangers started to manage to get inside the Earth atmosphere and started to kill us, right? It did not increase the temperature of the Earth itself. Climate change comes later after that, right? But it caused a lot of cancers, right? It kills a lot of animals. So there was a big worry about this huge ozone layer. So therefore, there was this global agreement to stop production of CFC. So no more CFCs in refrigerator, no more CFCs in that food container, right? So when you buy that food container, the white food container, they say that CFC free. No CFC. Now they don't use that, they use other containers, plastic containers. Now we create another problem, a headache for us, plastics, another stable compound that cannot be destroyed. It is very stable. It remains there for I do not know how long, right? Scientists still doing the research. But plastic breakdown, when it breaks down, it doesn't break down to simpler compound or simpler element, but it breaks down to smaller pieces. It becomes microplastics. So when we throw plastics in the sea or anywhere, right, it breaks down, it breaks up into smaller plastics. We call it microplastics that were eaten by animal food, by marine animals, by fish and all that, and those microplastics get inside their flesh, and we eat all these marine animals, so we digest plastics in us. So most of modern humans, we have plastic in us, right? We either consume plastic indirectly through the flesh of the marine animals, the fish or the shellfish, and people like to eat seafish or seafoods. It contains a lot of plastics actually, right? People say, oh, it's very delicious. Yeah, delicious to the tongue, but once you get into your stomach, all the taste gone. But you see, the effect remains. So we are killing ourselves indirectly, but we also consume plastic directly. How? Because we are so clever, we created plastic that we used to put, for Malays lah, we put rice inside the plastic and then we boil the plastic with the rice inside to produce lontong. And then we eat that for breakfast. But it is being boiled in a plastic container. And even though that plastic remains, right, microplastic, there there will surely be microplastic, right, being absorbed inside that lontong, right? And then after that, we can't see it. It's micro, means less than a nanometer, less than a micrometer. You can't see it with your eyes, but lots of it inside, and we digest it, we eat it, and we eat lontong a lot, so we digest plastic, and plastics inside us, and plastic is toxic to humans, right? It destroys cells, can cause cancers. So that is plastic. So be very mindful of that. And then furthermore, we worsen the matter by what? We cut that plastic lontong, right, with knife. And so we pierce to the plastic through the lontong itself to the rice. And therefore some of the plastic, micro plastic, because you cut it, don't think that it is a very clean cut. You're not using laser, okay? You're using a knife, and a knife is just a metal. You think it's sharp, but it's really, when you look it under the microscope, it's not that sharp. So some of the plastics being what they call it, being ejected, or being what they call it, I do not know how to say it, but some of it being forced into that lontong itself, and then you eat it. So we are trying to, so we create another problem after we destroy the ozone, and then after that CFC, we stop producing CFC. So the earth is healing itself, but the hole is still there. The whole over Antarctica, the whole over Arctic is still there. So UV light still coming in, and that's why it's very dangerous for people. You know, all those scientists are staying at the Antarctica doing research for long period of time. It is quite dangerous for them, but it's been mitigated. Why? Because over there is 6 months daylight, 6 months night. So actually they're being exposed to the sun only for 6 months, but 6 months of direct ultraviolet, because the hole is above them, but the hole is shrinking in size. Sometimes it gets bigger, sometimes it gets smaller, but the hole is still there because CFC is very stable. It's still there, up there. We still do not know how to remove the CFC from our atmosphere. So that problem has not finished. We create another problem, the plastic problem. And then that plastic problem has not finished. We keep on increasing. We keep on producing plastic, right, and burn plastic. Use plastic, because plastic is a very useful material that we created. Then we make another problem, that we produce a lot of carbon dioxide. We burn all these, what do you call it, fuel, hydrocarbons, right, for our energy needs, our cars, this and that. So per year, thousands of billions of tons, not just millions, billions of tons being produced, billions of tons of carbon dioxide being produced to the air. So much so that all the trees, we calculate all the trees cannot absorb the carbon dioxide anymore. Cannot take the carbon dioxide and change it into oxygen. And furthermore, we are killing trees, right? We are chopping off trees, we are chopping off forests, so we are choking ourselves. We are producing carbon dioxide, but we are also killing off all those things that Allah created to absorb the carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is also being absorbed inside the Earth ocean, right? It is a huge carbon dioxide sink. It sinks inside, but then it's too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that the amount of carbon dioxide being absorbed into the Earth ocean change the ocean's acidity level, raise the ocean acidity level, because carbon dioxide, if you bubble carbon dioxide into the water will become acidic, become carbonic acid. That's why you have all these frizzy drinks, this Coca-Cola, this Pepsi-Cola, basically putting carbon dioxide inside and making it acidic. It's acidic. It's pH 4, right? 4.5, 5, sometimes 5.5. So the pH value for the whole of Earth ocean, which is the measure of the acidity of the Earth ocean, is now reduced from the neutral 7 pH value to about 6, less than 6, 5.5. So because of the raised acidity level, it kills a lot of corals, right? And the Earth ocean becomes warmer, so corals die, loss of corals die, right? Many corals die. When corals die, fish die, because fish depends on corals to live. they thrive on corals because that's where the foods are all there. You can't find fish in the middle of the ocean. You can't. You can only find fish around corals or towards the shore. That's where they can find their food. So over fishing, right, of animals, of fish, and then the ocean becomes acidic, becomes warmer, we are essentially killing ourselves. So we are wondering, right? For all people wondering, are humans really clever creature or stupid creature? It seems that we are moving towards a stupidity level rather than the clever level, because we cannot accept, right, all this change in atmosphere. We cannot make the sacrifices for our future generations because we are essentially selfish creatures. So we are destroying the environment. It takes billions of years, right, to stabilize the Earth atmosphere. We are destroying in less than 50 years. That's incredible. Less than 50 years, we are destroying. Subhanallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give all this realization to the rest of humans, right? So to make them realize that we are killing ourselves. Or is it Allah's plans to shave off some of human population? Billions of people need to die because of this climate change. Only then that the earth will heal itself. We do not know. We do not know. As much as you see, Allah sends down this virus, this COVID virus. People think that, oh, this human creation. Please, this is not human creation. No humans are clever enough to create such a horrible virus. Right? This coronavirus. This is just one of the family of coronavirus. It mutates and it kills. Right? It's just a reminder for us. It doesn't kill a lot of humans, right? Well, for us, hundreds of thousands, but it's just less than 0.01% of the total human population on Earth. But this is a reminder that Allah can wipe out, right, most of humans anytime that Allah wants. So we are facilitating that. So anyway, the ozone stabilized about 2 billion years ago, around that, during the Proterozoic Eon. Because of that shield, the ozone shield, then the cell, the first cell, which is the Prokaryote cell, right? This is a very, very simple cell. It evolved or it combined together. Some scientists say they combined together to become a eukaryotic cell. Now, this is the cell that actually is the component of our body or all other living organisms today. Right, it's a very complex cell where they have this nucleus, right? Inside this DNA inside the nucleus, inside the core, and then we have all other cell apparatus here. We have this, what do you call it, endoplasm. We have the Golgi apparatus and all other things that have specialized tasks and duties for that cell. So that cell becomes specialized. It becomes cell to produce oxygen by way of photosynthesis, cell that produce energy, right? For example, our muscle cells that can move together, right? So a lot of things. So cells, specialized cells that specialize to absorb light, right? And then after that, change the light into electrical signal and then send to the brain, and then the brain cell, right? The brain have neurons, right? And this brain cell interpret it as whatever you want to interpret it, whether it's blue, green, or whatever. It's just electrical signal. What we see as green, blue, whatever, it is how the brain interpret that signal. Okay, and Allah caused us to agree that this signal is what you call is green color, or blue color, or black color, or whatever you want to call it. It's just a combination of the electrical signals, subhanAllah. So actually nothing is actually really real. Right? Everything is subjective to what our brain interprets, what our brain see from the electrical signals from the eye, what our brain interprets from the electrical signal from the ear, right? All the sounds coming in, and then it goes to the cochlea, and then the what do you call it, the water inside the cochlea moves and shift together all these small tiny hairs inside the cochlea, and then this tiny hairs, right, produce electrical signal, goes to the brain, and then the brain interprets, oh, the wave is like this, so the sound is like that, or the wave is like this, so it's soothing for me, or the wave is like that, so it's very, very shrieking for me, this and that. It's all inside the brain. The taste inside the brain, sweet, sour, everything, right? It's just electric signal from the tongue itself. It goes up there. So this is what it's all inside here. So that's why philosophers, they said, nothing is real. And people don't understand. Oh, why you're crazy? Nothing is real. I touch this is real. How can you say this? Nothing is real. But they are talking at a higher plane. They're talking at what is inside here. How can you sure that what you see is really what you see, right? What you see is actually what your brain interprets. You see, you think it's a ghost, but actually this is what your brain plays is a ghost. How come you can see that ghostly thing, but the dog, the cats, the spiders, they can't see it? So something is wrong. How can this person see, that person cannot see? It might be there, it might not be there. So it's just all these minds here, right? Somebody touch you, you feel that touch, right? It's actually electric signal, right? From all these nerves ending in your skin and goes there, and then you interpret it whether it is soft or it's hard or whatever, how much is the pressure. So this is the one. So anyway, right, cells specialize. That is the eukaryotic cell. So all other animals, they evolve from these eukaryotic cells. Eukaryotic cells, they gather together. How they gather together, we do not know. But we as Muslims believe that everything is Allah's plan, according to Allah's plan. Allah designed them to come together and then work together, right, seamlessly, and they become an organism. They become a higher organism, a more complex organism. Who are we? We are just a collection of billions of cells specialized in certain ways. Our eyes, cells specialized in certain ways. Nose, nerve, right, brain, this and that. All these cells are actually they specialize because they come from a single cell, the mother of all cells, that we call them as the stem cell. Right? And the stem cell is actually the eukaryotic cell. Right? And after that, Allah caused them to specialize, right, according to the DNA inside that stem cells. Subhanallah. Wa fi anfusikum afala tubsirun, Allah SWT says in the Quran, and it's inside yourself. Have you not seen it? Right? The greatness of Allah's creations. Now, this thing, right, happens during the Proterozoic period. Then after that, they came the Snowball Earth. Temperature started to decrease. Oxygen started to increase. Then after that, certain things happened. We are still not sure what happened. It might be because of the Earth orbit around the sun. There must be some perturbation or whatever. We do not know. We really do not know. It might be that the level of carbon dioxide drops drastically, right? But by what mechanism, we do not know. But we do know from what do you call it? Research from stones, from rocks, right? During this Proterozoic period, there were several periods of time when Earth went through deep freeze, when majority of Earth's surface might be 90%, more than 90% or 80% of Earth's surface covered in ice. So we call it as the ice ages, right? So Earth went through this period when the Earth freezed, right? Only a certain portion of Earth's surface were ice-free because they were at the equator, so they received the sun direct, so they will warm up, right? But it was still cold. It was not hot like today's desert, but it was not below 0 degrees to the point where ice can form. But as you go up the latitude towards the temperate region, everything was covered with ice. So then after that, the Earth thawed, right? Melted, all the ice melted. We're still not sure why. Then after that, it went into another deep freeze, another ice age. So ice age, exit the ice age, enter another ice age, exit that ice age, enter another ice age. So this is the, what they call it, the period, or the history of the Earth from the Proterozoic period, not from the Archean period, from the Proterozoic period from 2.4 billion years ago. So this deep freeze period, this ice age, it lasted for hundreds of millions of years. Imagine, not thousands of years, hundreds of millions of years, 200 million years. 300 million years, 150 million years, around that, right? Not sure lah. This is just a ballpark figure. So then after that, it melted. It went out from the ice phase. We're still not sure why, right? Why it went out from this deep period. It might be there was some volcanic eruption, right? And so therefore it melted the Earth because lots of carbon dioxide being produced and then released to the atmosphere. But it might be also the volcanic eruption caused the Earth to enter another ice age. Because once you have a super volcanic eruption, right, and you have billions cubics of kilometers of dust being thrown into the atmosphere, it will cover the whole atmosphere, right? So it's just like a big cloth covering the Earth. And so therefore, sunlight cannot penetrate that. Therefore, the Earth's surface cool down to a certain temperature that it becomes a runaway ice age. Becomes cold and cold and cold and cold. And this is not impossible because it happened before. And it happened during the, you see, quite recent also. You know, in 18, I'm not sure, I think it's 1883 or 1884, right? The year 1883 to 84, there was this huge volcanic eruption of the coast of Java Island, between Java and Sumatra, right? There was this island, they call it the Krakatau Island. So this one big, huge Krakatau Island, there was this huge volcano up there and it exploded that year. And the explosion was so huge that it broke up the island into pieces. Imagine. And now, after almost 100 years, we have smaller islands and we call it as Anak Krakatau Island. So there are about 3 or 4 islands there, right, that came from the original Krakatau Island. But that explosion, right, that Krakatau explosion, it emitted a lot of dust into the atmosphere and sulfuric dioxide into the atmosphere, that so much so that it cools down the Earth. The dust blocked the sun rays from reaching us, and then the sulfur that was released from the Krakatau so huge that it actually absorbs the heat. So therefore, the Earth atmosphere cooled down. Subhanallah. That year, right, after that explosion, the year following that, there was an extended winter season in UK. People could still skate, you know, skating on ice on River Thames during summer. June, July, when it was hot, it must be hot because it's summertime in UK. But that year, following that explosion, the winter extended all the way to summer and joined to another winter. So people skated on the Thames River during June, July. It was impossible to imagine that, but it was so cold. And because it was so cold, it killed off all those plantations. It kills off all those, what do you call it, vegetations. And therefore, right, there was a famine, right, following year because crops could not live. So there were shortage of food. And so there was a famine in Ireland, in Scotland after Krakatau. So one event, the far corner of the Earth, right, has the ripples effect all the way to all the 4 corners of the Earth itself. So imagine just one explosion. Now imagine the explosion from a super volcano, and I shared with you already, right? There are at least 3 known super volcano on Earth right now. At least 3 that we know of. One is in Yellowstone in America. It's a huge volcano. The caldera itself, the mouth of the volcano, is close to about 150 kilometers big. Subhanallah. That is the mouth of the volcano. Another one is in New Zealand, and another one is just nearby us, just our neighbor, beside us. That is in Lake Toba, in Sumatra. So Lake Toba is actually the lake that forms on the mouth of that super volcano, that Toba super volcano. And that Lake Toba is 150 kilometers in length, in diameter, or in length. It's not the perfect circle. And there's even an island in the middle of that Lake Toba. And that island is bigger than Singapore. It can be seen from space. Subhanallah. right? And previously it was inaccessible. You want to go to the island, you got to take a boat. But now you can walk through. There's a land bridge because the water in that lake is dropping in its level. Why is it dropping? Scientists believe that there are cracks under that Lake Toba, right? And so that crack caused all the water to seep through. So the level of water in Lake Toba is decreasing, and that is very worrying because the crack shows that the super volcano is rumbling a little bit. It's trying to get awake. It happens after the 2004 Aceh earthquakes and the tsunami after that. So there were a lot of cracks on it. So may Allah SWT save us from this explosion of this super volcano, because if it explodes, no one will be saved, right? Certainly Southeast Asia will be wiped out. Certainly. And it will extend all the way to Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and parts of India. We're going to be extinct. No more Southeast Asia, no more Philippines. And the effect will be until America, because the whole world will be plunged into another ice age. And that is why some scientists say that the only way to reduce this global warming is to weather by natural means, and that is to have another or several volcanic explosions that emit all this sulfur dioxide that cool down the earth, or we emit all this sulfur dioxide and release it to the atmosphere to cool down the atmosphere itself, to cool down the temperature. But we do not know what is the effect of that action to humans' life or to animals' life. We do not know. So it might be that we will start the runaway ice age, just like happened before, right? And will extend for thousands, maybe millions of years. Because once you start, it's difficult to stop. Difficult to stop. And we're actually in the middle of ice age, actually. What's the definition of ice age? If you have a free ice on Earth's surface, and we have free ice on Earth's surface, basically you go to North Pole, South Pole, there are free ice existing there. So that is clearly an indication that we are still in an ice age. We have free ice on mountain tops, so we are still in the ice age by definition. And ice is actually why we are not covered by ice all over the earth, or most part of the earth. It is because we are in the period, we call it as the interglacial period. Interglacial period is a warm period in an ice age. So we have this ice age. In between this ice age, there are several periods of time when the temperature rises up. When the temperature rises up, right, things get warmer, and therefore ice retreated, ice melted, right? So therefore we have lots of lakes. In Canada, we have lots of lakes. We have the huge lake in what do you call it, in Siberia, no, above Mongol, we call the Lake Balkan, and we have many other lakes. Because of that ice, they were covered, that covered all this earth surface, and then they melted. And we are in the middle of that ice. We are in this interglacial period, the warm period in between huge ice age. It started about 10,000 years ago, right? And every interglacial period is around that. So scientists have they drill the core, they drill a core into the Antarctica's ice, and they can see that layers of interglacial ice age. And it estimated about every interglacial ice age, the warm period is about 10,000 years, 9 to 10,000 years. So we are actually approaching the end of our interglacial period. It started 10,000 years ago, and that interglacial period, this current interglacial period that we are in, actually assists us, Homo sapiens, us, the sons of Adam, the children of Adam, alayhi salam, to build civilizations. Why can't we build civilizations before 10,000 years ago? Why? Because there were ice covering all over the earth. We can't build cities on ice. It's impossible, right? Only when all this ice melted, and then we have all this open space in Egypt, in Iraq right now, and temperature was cooler, and because ice were there, ice melted, and the earth was fertile because of the ice, and so therefore civilization started to sprout out. That's about 6,000 to 7,000 years ago. People thought, right, there are still people who think that human beings or Nabi Adam alayhi salam came down about 6,000 to 7,000 years ago. Even some academics who are not scientists, they thought that, well, human beings started 6,000 to 7,000. Nabi Adam started to appear 7,000 years ago because civilization started 7,000 years ago. They fell into the trap of the Judeo-Christian belief. The Bible belief that the Biblicistic belief that the Earth started about 6,000 to 7,000 years ago. They fell into that trap without they knowing it. Right? We have been existing for a very long time, and I've shared with you, Nabi Adam alayhi salam has been here, right? He was sent down tens of thousands years ago, maybe 70,000 years ago, maybe 80,000 years ago. We do not know, but there were no civilizations, there were no cities. Because why? Because of that ice age. We can only build civilizations in this interglacial period. Now, the interesting thing is that we are approaching the end of interglacial period. We expect that by right, you look at the pattern, right, ice age will come again, and then everything will start to cool down, right? Temperature will start to plummet, and then ice will start to conquer most of the Earth's surface. But somehow or other, because of our technological advance, we produce a lot of chemicals, and because of the climate change, we somehow or other manage to stop that coming of ice age or the return of that ice age, right? And you actually reverse that process. We are actually increasing the temperature, the global temperature of the Earth. That is what we are doing, right? Humans have reached to the stage that we are able to destroy the Earth. We are able to kill or cause extinction of even ourselves because of our knowledge that we misuse and our greed and our selfishness. Okay, so going back to that Snowball Earth, right? There were a lot of ice covering. Let me show you this thing. This is Snowball. This is just a depiction of how the ice covered the whole of the planet, and it's not impossible because we can now see it. The example in another celestial body, and that is the Jupiter's moon Europa. Now, Jupiter's moon, this Europa, is covered totally in ice, and when NASA send probes over there, right? They bounce off radio waves from the Europa surface, and they calculated that the ice might be around 50 kilometers thick. Imagine the ice is thicker than the deepest ocean. Our deepest ocean is about just 11 kilometers. The ice is 50 kilometers thick on Europa, which is Jupiter's moon. So the whole chunk of that moon is ice, very, very thick ice, right? Temperature, if you look at this, right, this is a graph, this is an estimated graph. We have this Archean, Proterozoic, Paleozoic, Mesozoic, and Cenozoic. So you can see that during the Paleozoic period, there are periods of time when the temperature dips, right? It becomes colder and colder. Okay, during the Proterozoic, we are in the Proterozoic. So it started, the Archean, still the temperature is still warm, there was no ice age, but it started during the Proterozoic when the ozone layer stabilized, right? And then temperature started to drop, and then it increased again, and then it drops again, increase again, and then it started to drop again, increase. And so you have this period of ice age. So Earth entered into the ice age, exit the ice age, enter the ice age again, enter the ice age again. So there are several ice ages. And then during the Mesozoic period and during our time, right, actually temperature goes down. So we are actually in the middle of the ice age, right? But temperature rises because of the interglacial period. But we expect actually, if nothing happens, right, if we don't have the technological advance, ice age will come back and we live, all civilization will stop because we cannot continue building civilizations, right, on ice. But we change everything. Okay, so I'm going to stop here, right? Because after that, we're going to discuss on the next phenomena that happened during the Proterozoic period, which is what do you call it, the movement of the earth crust that caused the earth map as what we can see right now today. Okay, so let's see if there's any question. Yes, there's a question here. It means Nabi Adam before Ice Age. Well, how to answer this? If you look at this map here, this period here, right? Nabi Adam alayhi salam, all Homo sapiens, right? Actually, right? We lived during an ice age. For the earliest Homo sapiens, which is animals Homo sapiens, not Adamic Homo sapiens. We call it animalistic Homo sapiens, not given roh, not given the spirit, not given the brain to think. So they were before Nabi Adam alayhi salam, then they went extinct when Nabi Adam alayhi salam was sent down, and Nabi Adam's children, progeny, right, conquered them and killed them, survival of the fittest, so they went extinct. So whatever Homo sapiens left on earth is just all the descendants of Nabi Adam alayhi salam. But we, all of Homo sapiens, from the earliest Homo sapiens, animalistic Homo sapiens, all these animalistic Homo sapiens, about 250,000 years ago, until now, we live in an ice age. But like I said, there were a number of interglacial periods where temperatures started to go up. We do not know why, right? Started to go up and things started to warm up. When something started to warm up, and then people started to move around, right? So there were interglacial period about 10,000 years ago, right? 12 to 10,000 years ago. So ice started to melt, and then Homo sapiens started to migrate from Siberia, from the northern part of Russia, right? That links to Alaska through the Bering Strait. So this Bering Strait here, it's water right now, but before, because it was a lot of ice, it was just land bridge, right? Because water locked into the ice. So therefore, they started to migrate, they follow the animals, and so they move around, and they move into Alaska, trapped into Alaska, because Alaska, a lot of ice there, they couldn't move down to USA or Canada, USA right now, that's what we call it right now, to Central America, because they were locked by the ice. But then as the ice melted during the interglacial period, after the 10,000 years, they started to go down. They started to migrate. All these early Homo sapiens, the children of Nabi Adam alayhi salam, started to go down Canada, right, and enter the USA as it's right now. So they started to stay there, and that's when we call it as Native Americans. But it was still very cold, lah, right? I don't say that we started to melt, it becomes temperature like Saudi Arabia. No, it was like a temperature right now, right, in Canada, where you have winter that is 40 degrees Celsius, but you have summer when it's 20 degrees Celsius, 30 degrees Celsius. So you have extreme weather. So then they moved down, so they settled there, they became Native Americans, and then some of them started to decide, right, decide to move further down, further south, and they went to Mexico and stayed there and started a civilization over there, the Mayan civilization, and then they moved down further, right, to South America, and they started another civilization, the Inca civilization, over there, right? So we have that Mayan civilization, we have that Inca civilization. And so then after some of them went through the Amazon jungle, and they stayed there, they became the native people of the Amazon jungle, and all the way down. This is how human migration works, all because of that interglacial period. So human movement into the South American continent, or the American continent, only started around 10,000, 9,000 years ago. But before that, humans have been roaming around, right, the Asian continent and right through Australia. So early humans started to arrive in Australia around 50,000 years ago. They managed to build boats, simple raft that can cross the sea and enter Australia. Whereas those animalistic Homo sapiens, they've been moving around in Africa for tens of thousands of years, even 100,000 of years. They couldn't manage to even migrate to Europe. They couldn't even build any what do you call it, boats or structures that help them to survive. So they just survive there. Only the children of Adam endowed with that faculty of thinking, mind, and knowledge. They built that boat or raft and they entered Australia. They became the Aborigines of Australia. And there have started the extinction of most of the marsupials in Australia. So these are the stories. Okay, so we're going to continue next week, inshallah. We're going to talk about the Spengia and then Gondwanan and so forth next week, inshallah. Okay, thank you very much. No more questions. We end with Tasbih, Kafara, and Suratul Asr. Subhanakallah bika asyhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wal 'asri innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa 'amilus solihati wa tawassaw bil haqqi wa tawassaw bis sabr. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.